to a very specific trademark, like an industry news outlet, the truth is most reporters don't care. So like the product relaunches will never fly for a national paper, for example. They're totally indifferent because their readers are totally indifferent, right? Product launches, on the other hand, for TechCrunch, work quite well, right? They basically cover fundraisings and launches. So that doesn't guarantee that they'll cover yours, but it does tell you what the bar probably is for getting a story, right? And the bar at TechCrunch, I wouldn't say it's lower, but that's its shape. That's where it is. If you've got a launch to do or a fundraising to announce, it's definitely one of the places you go. So if you're working with a PR firm, I'm going to give you two visions. The first is how people think PR works, and then the second is how it really works. So most people go to PR firms and they figure out how much money they need to pay them, and it usually ranges from $2,000 to $25,000, and that's a retainer, right? So that retainer means that they'll answer your phone calls, right, which is nice of them. When you negotiate that fee, it probably also means they'll try to get a certain number of press hits for you per month. And so PR clients, what they're thinking is, okay, a certain amount of press hits per month, what are the square inches that I'm getting in a publication? How much would those cost in ads? Okay, 15,000, it's less than I pay in ads. I'll take it, it's a deal, right? And that's fine, but PR is actually not that simple, and it's very difficult for a PR firm to promise any hits. You know, they may look back historically and say, oh, okay, on average, we got 4 hits per month for our clients. Great, we'll get you about 4. And they could be right, but because reporters are the true decision makers, it's very hard for someone in PR to promise anything. And I say that as an in-house PR person who struggles with it every day. You know, I know it's out of my hands. I try hard, I throw spaghetti at the wall, and I see what sticks. So businesses come to PR with, I would say, naive expectations that if they give money and business speak to, or money and information to PR firms, the PR firms spin that into a story, give it to a reporter, the reporter writes up a piece, and all of a sudden you've got customers and coverage, right? That's the kind of ideal world for a business. It's not how it works. This is a lot more complex. It's a lot messier slide because reality is a lot messier. It starts down here. The client sends money, usually business speak, and crazy expectations. When will I be on the cover of Time, right? The answer is probably never, but unless you work really, really hard. PR, because it has to have clients, can't say that's crazy, but they work with that, right? They have to kind of handle and massage those expectations. So what they say is, I can introduce you to reporters. Good PR firms do know reporters. They have relationships. That doesn't mean they can translate your story into coverage because it's just not their decision to make. But they'll say, okay, we can introduce you to reporters. We can put out press releases for you. Tell me about your new product. And a lot of the time, they're sending back proof of busy work. Like, there's a lot of work that gets done in PR that's just like, I want to be able to tell the client I pitched that story. You know, it's kind of a waste of time, but I guess at least you know they're trying to work in your interest, even if it's not paying off. What happens next? The client gives the story to the PR. They send the story ideas to the reporters. The reporters, okay, the reporters usually don't open their email, which is really too bad. But reporters are strange beasts. You can't control them. It's hard to influence them. A lot of times you can't even reach them. So I know at least 3 important reporters in the Valley who don't use email. They don't even use email. So all those email blasts that you're sending them off some list you found somewhere, it's never reaching them, right? Like reporters I know, they're on Facebook or they're on SMS. Like they got tired of the blasts. They've become introverted and begun to retreat because there's so much demand for their attention. The other thing PR does is it invites reporters to events. So most of the important tech reporters in the Valley are getting invited to a ton of events. And on any given evening, they'll be at a swanky dinner hosted by a PR firm and its clients, right? So the clients are really paying for that. They're paying for dinner where they'll have contact with the reporters. Unfortunately, that doesn't usually lead to stories, right? So what here's what's really happening in PR. You're paying PR, and PR is producing dinners. They're producing introductions to reporters. The reporters are, in a sense, the presence of the reporters is the product they're offering, right? And those reporters weirdly know that. Like, I'm the product PR firms are selling to their clients, but the reporters don't have to do anything, you know, unless that PR firm has made it absolutely indispensable, has made itself absolutely indispensable in helping those reporters cover difference. Okay, right. So that's my provocative statement on PR. The reason why PR is such a difficult job is because it's responsible for outcomes that are not in its control, right? If any of you do your own PR, you'll find out just how much they're not in your control. I hope the result of this talk will be to increase the likelihood, your own, that you may have some purchase on events, that you may be able to influence coverage a little bit. Okay, let's jump ahead just one step. Before you ever get to PR, right, before you even think of it, I think you need a couple things. You need a good product, right? Before you ever go to PR, you should have crowd tested your product. You should have talked to a lot of potential customers, right? You should know that you have something that people are willing to spend money for, right? Because if you don't have that, PR is going to send you a gusher of visitors to your website, and it'll all just evaporate, right? And that'll be a waste of everybody's time. So what you really need to do is you need to crowd test the product, find your product market fit. Then you need to go to your website and, you know, pay AdWords a few $100s, send people to your website and see what they're willing to pay and see where they drop off, you know. What pages kind of result in 0 registrations for your mailing list, right? Tighten those funnels up. You know, fix the text on your buttons. We've worked with buttons, we altered the text on a button and it increased our registrations by 30%, right? We should have done that before, I wish I had done that before our last round of PR, because we would have gotten a lot more new clients, right? So I would say, find product market fit, tighten your funnel. And once you've got a tight funnel, then you're ready for PR, because PR is just gonna, if you're successful, it will just pour clients on your website. Okay, so let's get to how you can communicate with reporters. If you're sending them email, for example, some do read their email. The most important thing to remember for you, whether you have a PR firm or whether you're doing it yourself, is you need to talk plain, normal English. You know, if you learned a word at an accelerator or business school or wherever, that's a really sexy, buzzy word, that word probably doesn't work with reporters because they get it all. You know, when I was at Bloomberg, I was hearing about 12 revolutions per day. Right? I didn't care about handbags being revolutionized. So if you come to me and say, I revolutionized this or that, I'm going to press the lead, right? So it's all about coming to people with reasonable language, you know, everyday English. Stuff that if you meet a stranger on the street and you're trying to explain it in one-syllable words, stuff they'll understand. Reporters will respect it. They still might not write about you, but at least they'll think you're human, right? And that's the basis of something. The second thing to remember with any story you pitch is that it needs what we call a hook. So a hook can be all kinds of things. Here's where reporting resembles marketing. Marketing wants to bring people, wants to grab their attention. Reporters have to do that too, right? Reporters have to make something seem important, interesting, fascinating, big. Like it could be, they could be talking about billion-dollar deals. When you see the big numbers splashed across the press, they're using those numbers to get your attention, right? Every reporter is including in his or her top paragraph all of the stuff that they think is going to lead you to the next paragraph and the next paragraph. They've built their own funnel, right? And they hope it's tight, and they want to lead you all the way to the end. Okay. One of the things that makes a great hook is a good story. Stories, if I had to describe them in one sentence, are about characters who change through struggle to make a point, right? That's what a story does. So let's start with characters. The character, there's two kinds of characters. I'll start with the first one. The first kind of character is you. You guys are the characters that you're telling the story about. You're entrepreneurs, you're in startup land, you have a struggle, and you have a goal, right? That goal is building a business. It's hard, right? Stories with interesting people building something in the face of adversity are something people want to read about, right? So pay attention to your own life. Figure out what you're struggling against, and figure out how to tell it in an interesting way. You're probably already sharing it with your friends, right? So take some version of that, condense it, find a way to condense it, and share it with a reporter. Because those are riveting human interest stories. The riveting stories that readers want and that reporters want are not business speak. It's not about, we're so proud to launch this product. It's not about, yes, we're pleased to partner with somebody. It's not about this complacent, self-congratulatory stuff that comes out of businesses all the time. It's really about, hey, we're real people. We're doing something hard. We think we're doing it better now than we were back then. Here's what it's like, right? And you give them what we call color. You give them, you know, the pattern on the wallpaper. You give them the taste of the soda or the ash in your mouth after a bad phone call, right? Like you give them emotion in your stories, and that makes them want to write about you. Okay, so what's your struggle? Your struggle, you need to be able to explain. Here's the great thing about overcoming an obstacle is that you probably understand it, right? You probably understand it better than before you faced it, and better than people who have never faced it at all, right? So one of the great things about telling these stories is that you can also help people understand the reality of being an entrepreneur, the reality of running a business, being in Silicon Valley. That's all stuff that America cares about a lot because tech is really sexy. You know, people are fascinated with this great Asian wealth that's here, right? And they don't know. They don't know how it works. But you guys know that because you're in the middle. So as you're telling your story of overcoming these obstacles, you can give people kind of the lay of the land. Here's how it works. Those kinds of insights sell newspapers. And whatever sells newspapers is your path into a newspaper. Okay, the last thing you need to remember when you're telling your story, you need to convey why it matters, right? It's not just about one business with from 5 to 10. People kind of care about that, but not really. What they care about more is like, what larger cause is your business serving? You know, what general good, what deeper problem is it solving, right? What effects will it have on society? Like one of the, how can I say, like all of you are building businesses, I assume that solve certain problems for people. Maybe they bring people closer together, maybe they improve their quality of life, right? Maybe they make seniors safer in their homes, right? And as soon as you say, oh, this makes people safer, all of a sudden, a lot of people care about it, right? So that's the goal. We want to make people safer. We're doing it by building this piece of hardware, right? It's really hard to make this hardware. Here's how we're moving towards this goal you care about too. That's the bigger story. Okay. A really good exercise to do when you're preparing to talk to reporters or write on your website is to condense your story into 2 sentences. And the reason is because that's all the room reporters have to quote you. Like, they'll do a quote, you've probably all seen it. They do a quote, first sentence, attribution, Chris Nicholson from Celery, second sentence, right? So you've got to practice 2-sentence stories. Here's the obstacle that we faced, here's how we overcame, right? Here's the problem I saw in the world, here's how I solved it with my product. Here's what the industry was like. Like with Google, for example, in the 1990s, a lot of search engines were selling the top spots in the searches, and they were giving people really bad search results, right? So the first sentence is, in the 1990s, search engines were not treating users well. The second sentence is, that left a huge opening for Google, right? You guys can all see how that template kind of fits into your world, I hope. Like, here was the industry, and that was my niche. Now this is probably something you all saw in your senior English class, right? This is the narrative arc, right? So here's your trigger. Maybe one day you're walking down the street and you see somebody with a problem and you think, oh, I think I can solve that, right? And so you start dreaming of this invention. That's the trigger, right? And then you kind of wander into the crazy world of hardware and you realize, wow, making hardware is tough. How do I find a factory? That's your first crisis, right? How do I find a factory? And then you need to raise the money to send your thing to a factory. And you don't know how to do it. Crowdfunding is tough. That's your second crisis. right? And then finally, the factory in Shenzhen sends your things to a warehouse in the South Bay, and you realize that a wire is missing, right? So all of your stories are full of these crazy crises, right? Because business is complicated. You can tell that story in an exciting way and make reporters care about it. So rising that hidden dragon. Anyway, dragon is all kinds of things. It's the indifferent reality. It's a huge competitor you're facing. It's the very nature of the problem you're trying to solve, which may be intractable. And as you build through these things, like let's say you're approaching your delivery date and the goods show up and there's a wire missing, like that's huge. That's really awful. The excitement builds over the course of your story. It climaxes, hopefully, in a successful delivery, and everybody lives happily ever after. That's what I hope all stories do. Another thing to make clear to reporters, you need to do this. You need to concentrate on this a lot. So you have to tell them what exactly you do, in really simple language. A lot of you are probably talking to VCs, and you probably have to convince VCs that you will someday be a multi-billion-dollar business, right? That's not necessarily the message you want to send to reporters. Reporters want to know, what do you do for my readers? Their readers are generally not VCs. Their readers are mom and pop in Tucson, Arizona. Like, explain to mom and pop in simple language what you do. That's your promise. So you make your promise, and then you say, yeah, they can go check us out at their website, or hey, we're coming to Tucson next Tuesday at this trade show, right? You let reporters know, like, how their readers can access you. Because if they're writing about your product, then they think that their readers may care about that product, and they may want to show their readers how they could get access to you besides through the web. So you've got a chance here to slip some marketing, as long as that marketing doesn't seem too spammy. It's just like, hey, this is what we make. Here's how you can find it. So yeah, okay. And this is all, that's kind of marketing stuff. You can find it in our PR guide. Here's our promise. This is for you guys. If you sign up with us this week, if you come to our website and you need e-commerce, we offer to waive $500 worth of transactions processed through Celery. So that's it. That's my talk. I am open for questions.
What's the role of press release?
Yeah, that's a good question. Press releases are really good for big companies, right? If you already know you exist, then reporters are going to you. Like if you're Google, for example, everybody wants to talk to Larry Page. Everybody's kind of wondering, oh, what's the gorilla in the room going to do next, right? If you're a gorilla, you can issue press releases. If you're a really small company, press releases don't make that much sense. Like blog posts make sense, or the other thing that makes sense is just personal communications with reporters, where in very plain language, you say, here's what's going on, right? So it's not necessarily something that you publish. You don't have to worry that people are ever going to go and find the typos. When you're small, you've got to make your communications a lot more personal, and press releases are not personal.
So the cliche is all press is good.
Except an obituary.
So that makes your sense is anytime we can get around press.
I'd say almost all press. There can be press that can distract you from your daily operations. There can be bad press. But I would say 90% of press, if you're invisible and press makes you visible, that's pretty good. You don't want to be cast as the bad guys. But if you're anything, but you don't have to be cast as a hero for press to be good. I guess that would be my lesson. Yeah.
For those of us that don't have any friends who are reporters and talking about building relationships with
Yep.
reporters, what's the best way to find them in the first one?
Yes, that's also a really good question. There are a lot of links. There are a lot of links in this guide to tools you can use to do all this stuff. So there's a Google API interface where you can type in your keywords, and it'll basically tell you, here are all the reporters talking about fulfillment houses. Here are all the reporters talking about e-commerce, right? All of a sudden you've got a very valuable list of names of reporters who care about your site. So I'd say use that. Once you get that list of names, you can either find their email addresses yourself. It's usually at the bottom of their stories. Or if you don't have time, and if you're a founder,